The Ole Miss Rebels have a big-time official visitors list. Will Lane Kiffin and his crew get somebody to commit after this weekend?
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast in this crossover edition with Locked On Ole Miss. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast and Locked On Ole Miss your first listen, whichever channel you go to each and every day. Truly appreciate it. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet comes out a winner. We're going to be talking about all the players that Lane Kiffin and his crew have coming in for official visits. What's up for Ole Miss in terms of the guys you need to watch out for, possibly being on commit watch, and the guys that are just overall, no matter when they commit or sign, they're the most important for the Rebels this year. And to help me figure all that out, Locked On Ole Miss host Steven Willis. Steven, sir, how you doing today?
I am doing a whole lot better than the last time I was on this show, and thank you very much for taking care of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast in my absence. That was greatly appreciated. Got several comments about how good you were to the Loomers and how thankful they were that you were there. So thank you, Brian, so much.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a lot of fun, actually. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed covering Ole Miss, and I'd do it again. So let's talk a little recruiting. And the first guy, I don't even need to look at the stats or anything else because he's one of my favorite players in the class of 2026 overall, out of the metropolis of Leaksville, Mississippi. I say that in tongue-in-cheek. Small school down in the southeastern part of the state. Jace Matthews, I don't know what his best sport would be if he concentrated on it. Soccer, volleyball, track and field. I just know that he's one heck of a football player. And his vertical and his hand-eye coordination are next level. He's the kind of guy that goes and wins a dunk competition just because he can. And quick backstory, Deuce Knight told me that when Jace was a freshman in high school, he could not only dunk a basketball easily, he could go up in the air and take it between his legs when he was 15 years old and throw it down. And I'm like, okay, that's not a normal kind of athlete right there. So wide receiver, 6'1", 6'2", 180 pounds or so, but just really, really athletic. He might even be up to 190. He fits the bill for what you need if you want to dominate at the SEC level, because he's a guy you have to account for every time he lines up. If you don't, he'll run by you, he'll jump over you, he'll make you miss. Elite talent. And he's going to visit Ole Miss this weekend. Steven, do you think he is as big a priority for the Rebels as I do?
You know, everybody has heard about Tristan Keys. Tristan Keys is from Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I think that's a 7A classification, which is silly to me because there's 3 million people in the state. You don't need a 7A, but that's neither here nor there. He is on the tip of every Ole Miss fan's tongue, but Jace Matthews, he's from Greene County. He's from Leaksville. I think the closest city to him is probably Mobile, Alabama, if we're going to be real about it.
It is.
So if he would have been from Gulfport, if he would have been from Oak Grove, if he would have been from one of the larger high schools in the state of Mississippi, this would be a consensus top 20, top 25 level recruit because that's how athletic he is. He has visited Ole Miss. We always say follow the visits. This official visit will be really important for the Ole Miss Rebels. I've heard really good things about Jace Matthews and Xavier McDonald whenever we have that conversation in coming weeks. I think it's probably more likely that Ole Miss ends up landing Jace Matthews and Xavier McDonald than Tristan Keys at this point. But this is going to be a massively important visit and probably the star. Apologies to Carson Sneed of all the visitors that's on campus.
Yeah, I don't really disagree. It's kind of hard to go against what Jace has. And everybody's got their opinion on where he's going to go. But he's a kid that, because of where he's located at, Steven, it's not as easy to figure it out because a kid like that, he could have ties to a lot of different programs, and there's no one specific thing to say, hey, this is how it's going to go. But for the record, visited Colorado in early May. This is his second visit. It's to Ole Miss. Next weekend, he goes to the Plains at Auburn, And then on the 13th, he'll go to A&M, and then to finish, he visits the University of Miami. Now, I don't know if he's got his commitment date set, but my guess is Ole Miss will be one of the final 2 or 3. Which other one it is, take your pick. But they're the in-state school. I know it's low-hanging fruit, but I'm going to pick them to be in the finals to get him. I could be way off. He might end up with A&M and Miami as final 2, but I doubt that's the case. So to reiterate what Steven kind of touched on, the athleticism is insane. He was my number 3 overall receiver in the nation after going through a gazillion different players on film and seeing a bunch of them in 7-on-7 and seeing them live and seeing them at camps, Under Armour, etc. And just from a sheer athletic standpoint, I honestly think that the number 1 player in the country in terms of just raw gifts is Jace Matthews, because his vertical is insane. Like, he's the kind of guy, again, like he can hit his head on the rim probably. Those guys they're not really guardable. There were some passes on his huddle film where he went up and got it. The throw wasn't very good. He just made the play, and it just made it look stupid, like catching it as he's turning with one hand and stuff. He must have really big hands too, because he made a few one-handed catches that were just absolutely incredible. That's the kind of guy that, like in Lane Kiffin's offense, which he obviously schemes it up really, really well, he could be a difference maker pretty early on, because one thing I'll give Lane a lot of credit for, and some coaches fail to do this, he won't overwhelm a young player with the playbook. He'll cut it down a little bit so the kid can actually get on the field and catch football. I hate guys that make everybody try to make the whole playbook their thing. It's not realistic. So a guy like Matthews might be able to play early. And I know other schools are after him too, but I think Ole Miss would be a pretty good fit.
I think at the end of the day, whenever it all comes down to signing, it's going to be an Ole Miss-Auburn competition for this wide receiver. I mean, Auburn is actually closer to Jace Matthews than Ole Miss. It's actually a closer distance to Jace Matthews. What do you think the comp would be for Jace of college players right now, or pro players? Is he a Ryan Williams type wide receiver?
He's a little bigger than Ryan, but like Ryan's fat. Ryan was 10'3". Like, he was even faster, but he's not as thick and strong. Like, the hand size for Jace is a little different, but their frames are similar otherwise. They're lanky. They can really jump. Like, Ryan can do anything on a track, football field, basketball, same kind of deal. But Jace is a little heavier at this point. Like, long term, he could be a guy that ends up being 6'1", 205. And there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. So, especially with his leaping ability. But
that's Anquan Bolden.
What's that?
That's Anquan Bolden.
To a certain degree. Anquan doesn't have this kind of burst. Like, Anquan was fast, don't get me wrong, but Anquan's hand-eye coordination is one of the greatest there. Like, he was the ultimate power slot receiver. Nobody could really guard him because he would box guys out. Jace can just jump over you.
Yeah.
He can run a crappy route and catch the football. That can be dangerous. You can't get into that habit, but he can make plays other guys physically are just unable to do. And again, if you have not taken the time, go look up Jace Matthews' film. It is absolutely stupendous.
It's amazing.
So, yeah, it really, really is. When we come back, we're going to dive into some more of these players, but I'm telling you, Ole Miss has got some really key guys coming in, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So next up here on the Locked On crossover with Ole Miss and the portal, we got plenty more business to talk about for Ole Miss. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes every game a lot easier to watch before and live with player props, performance trends, same-game parlays, and the fans have more ways than ever to play smart and to win big. If you look at the playoffs here recently, just use the Knicks and the Pacers series as an example, you never really know what you're going to get. I don't think anybody necessarily had Benedict Mathurin coming up with 20 points in 12 minutes of play, but that's what he did for the Pacers in their win 130-121 over the Knicks. And then I don't know how to explain Tyrese Halliburton, 32 points, 15 assists, and 12 rebounds. That is incredible. But that series has been a banger. If you can figure out something to go together, maybe you can get a same-game parlay with that. And there are a lot of other options as well. So make sure you check out FanDuel. And if you are a new opportunist, somebody who's never been to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Steven, let's talk about the rest of this official visit list. I was pretty excited about Matthews there, obviously, but he deserves it. That's, in my opinion, a player that's a 5-star talent, as you had also duly noted. When you look at the list otherwise, there's a couple of kids, and I know one of the guys that you were excited about, so I just want to talk about him a little bit. Carson Sneed. Yep. He's out of Donaldson Christian Academy in Nashville. He's a kid that's committed to the Vols, which is not shocking. He's from the state of Tennessee, but he's a young man that has got the size. He's 6'5", 235 pounds. Do you think that this is a possible flip candidate short term, or is this a kind of a drawn out deal? What have you heard about Carson Sneed?
I think it's a long-term deal. It's a long game type of play. This weekend is going to be all about, hey, in Tennessee, they don't really use the tight end. You're going to be more of a blocker. You're going to be a body. I understand that you want to wear the power tee and the orange, but they're not going to get you ready necessarily for the next level. That offense that Josh Heupel runs, while it's a variation of what Ole Miss does, they don't do it the same way. Lane Kiffin knows how to use the tight end. They know how to make tempo and the tight end work. And I think they're going to try and plant that little seed in his head this weekend, both him and J.C. Anderson, the tight end out of Decatur, Illinois. They're going to let them know there's like, hey, Lane Kiffin, Charlie Weiss Jr., this offense knows how to effectively use the tight end, unlike other versions of this offense. I think that is the mission this weekend.
There's nothing wrong with that, because sometimes you got to play the long game. Mm-hmm. Everybody isn't going to just commit on their first visit. And for the record, there's the May 30th, June 6th, June 13th, and June 20th weekend. So this is the first of the big four. So there'll be a few commits. Ole Miss will get one or two of these kids to commit in the next week, 10 days is my guess. But the majority of them will take another visit, maybe two more before deciding. That's par for the course. Doesn't matter which school you want to look at. That's really kind of how this goes. Speaking of how it goes, I think it's smart that Ole Miss is breaking in Jahiel Jones, the running back out of Pike Road. He's committed to the Ole Miss Rebels. He's from enemy territory. He lives about 50 minutes from Auburn's campus. They got him coming in to kind of push the pile for Ole Miss. They've also got some kids coming in that have, at least allegedly, strong ties to Ole Miss. Tyreek Jemison, he's out of Paulding County, just outside of Atlanta. They're trending as one of the schools that could get him per on 3. Same thing with Tyler Chukim, another offensive lineman, same high school in that area. Like, I don't know what's going on with the Dallas, Georgia area and the Douglasville area right there on the edge of Atlanta. Those are two rival schools. They got offensive tackles going to visit Ole Miss. They got the Georgia thing going. I like the overall mix that Lane has. They've done a really good job of getting into Georgia this year. That never goes out of style. Then they got two kids, more offensive and defensive linemen. Emmanuel Tucker out of New Albany, Mississippi, committed to Mississippi State, so that's a big deal. And then they also have Corey Wells, D lineman out of Petal, Mississippi. Well, getting the lineman has always been the biggest deal for the Rebels. I like the way they're doing this, but do you think any of these guys are on commit watch, or is there any one of those that are like, okay, this is the guy they got to get?
I think Jahiel Jones and Braylon Williams almost wants to solidify them most of all. They want to get them to where they don't have to worry about it. Jones, I think, complements Yates very much as a running back tandem, and Lane has put together a good running back room in this. I think commitment-wise, honestly, somebody like Corey Wells, who's an in-state guy, he's a 4-star, but he's not a name that's overly heard of. He has a good visit that could pop. I don't think Carson Sneed is going to flip. I don't know about the Georgia boys. It's just too early in the official visit season, so we'll see exactly how it goes. But I like Jace Matthews. Everybody likes Jace Matthews. Jace Matthews isn't likely going to commit this weekend, although this could be an amazing visit and absolutely cement the fact that he's coming to Ole Miss. Jace Matthews is going to take his other visits because he would be silly not to.
Yeah, he wants to have fun with it. And these kids get money for taking these trips. That's just the reality of it. And I get it. So why not? Yeah, I'm sure it'd be fun eating steak 2 days in a row and, being toured around and seeing football facilities and just having fun with a bunch of guys from around the country, wherever he's visiting too. So we'll see how that goes. As for the rest of the list, do you think this is the kind of style that Lane likes? Because I bring this up because Clemson, I don't know if you've seen this, every kid they have committed and all but like one or two other kids that Clemson's recruiting, they're all visiting this weekend. It's one and done. Ole Miss has really got a balanced list week to week. What is Ole Miss's stance on that? Do they like this 10-12 kind of guy thing so they can give him more time? Like, obviously, Dabo looks at it from a totally different spectrum. What's Lane like to do?
I think Ole Miss likes to get one or two superlative athletes that everybody else who knows who they are and just kind of fill up 6 or 7 other players to kind of come in. So the big players get a ton of attention. The other players see big players on campus, and you can kind of work from there. Like next week, we'll talk about it coming in. Deuce Gerald's is going to be there. I think he might be the most important recruit that Lane is after this recruiting cycle, and that includes Landon Duckworth, who we've been on commit watch for Landon Duckworth for about 3 months at this point. But we'll see. I think Deuce Gerald becomes that guy the next weekend. This week is Jace Matthews, is Carson Sneed, and whenever that happens, the other players that comes in, maybe you can start a little momentum of 3 or 4 players that kind of want to hit it off and go to school together at the same point. Because one thing we know about the Grove Collective is the offer to the players going to be competitive. It's not going to be a situation that other schools are going to blow the price away. They do a pretty good job of being competitive. And if that happens, then it becomes that old style recruiting that we're all familiar with. It's all about fit, feel, how they're going to use you, how you feel on campus if you have a competitive offer. If Ole Miss gets money out of the way, they have a pretty good shot against some of these guys.
I would agree. Speaking of the list they have next weekend, I just want to make a quick shout out as a comparative point here while you brought it up. So I'm glad that you went ahead and did that. I was looking at it before we came on the show. The first guy I mentioned, ironically, is Deuce Gerald out of Collins Hill High School, just east of Atlanta. Big time player. He's got almost 60 offers. Xavier McDonald's going to be there. Landon Barnes, the player out of Texas. He's a Duncanville kid. You can never go wrong with edge defenders out of Duncanville High School. It's probably the best public school football program in the country. Craig Tutt, safety that's coming out of Tennessee. They got another kid, Anthony Davis, that I've seen play before. He's out of Grayson High School in Georgia. They are all over the place in the South, picking and choosing at this point. It's totally different than what it was a couple of years ago. And yet the visit list, again, is not like massive. They got a handful of guys coming in, but it's about the same size. So I'm guessing that Lane kind of likes it the way that he has it this weekend and next and stays with it consistently. When we come back, I just want to talk about one thing with Steven, and I know a lot of fans on this site, Locked On Ole Miss fans, they don't like Mississippi State. And there's a few kids that are kind of crossing, which is typical for in-state kids in particular. But I want to get Steven's take on Mississippi State, what they got to do to be, quote-unquote, more competitive with the Rebels moving forward. That is next here on this crossover of Locked On Ole Miss and Locked On the Portal. Steven, the Mississippi State Bulldogs last year were dreadful. I mean, they were bad. It was a rebuild situation. I don't really give too much credit or disheartening concern over what happened because the roster just wasn't there.
No.
They went out and spent some money. They did pretty decent in the portal for themselves. They got a few guys I didn't expect them to get. They spent some money. Their recruiting class wasn't bad. How far off do you think Mississippi State is from a recruiting and NIL? I've heard things about their NIL. I imagine you know more than I do. And then transfer portal. Are they a couple more years away from competing if they get there, or is it longer? It's not going to be. I don't think it's this year. Personally, I'd be surprised.
Yeah, they need to continue to fund their NIL budget because they got into that woefully behind. Their whole identity away from Ole Miss is that Ole Miss is the rich person's school. In the era of NIL, you kind of have to be the rich person's school too. You have to figure out what's going on. And second of all, they have to win some football games. They can't throw up an 0-8 in the SEC this year. They need to hit the over of the 4.5 that they're projected to win on FanDuel. Maybe get to a bowl game if that is possible. If that happens, they have a chance to get into some of these conversations. But as it sits right now, Lane Kiffin just kind of can pick and choose who he wants. And that's not a situation Mississippi State fans are going to abide by very long, if we're going to be honest about it.
That's the thing. Like, in our lifetimes, I'm not sure that Ole Miss is at any point recruited for a 3 to 5 year window better than they have right now. There are a few, maybe one class here or there, but from a consistency standpoint, Ole Miss has done better. And the problem with Mississippi State, even though they had a nice portal class and they did better in recruiting, it still wasn't where it needed to be. And it's the first year of doing it. They lost a bunch of kids too. So like they brought in Luke Kromenhoek, good quarterback, just to use one example. He's not ready to play. You know, like who's going to be the quarterback and how's that going to work if somebody gets hurt? This blah, blah, blah. There's a million questions over there. And I think they're the kind of school that makes the SEC fascinating because this is obviously a great league. But when teams like Mississippi State, Vandy last year with Diego Pavia, when they step up, it just throws a wrench in everybody else's situation. South Carolina way up last year. They've been a doormat for years. So it's wild. But they still might be, even though they're improved. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is there somebody you would pick? And I know you don't like Mississippi State, but is there anybody you could pick lower than Mississippi State this year in the league? Kentucky, maybe?
Yeah, maybe? I think Mississippi State is the betting favorite for the least amount of wins in the SEC. Second is Kentucky, by the way.
Okay, yeah, they don't scare me much.
Yeah, I think what happens is you're going to put Blake Shapen in at quarterback at the beginning of the year, and he's going to be okay. They're going to win a couple of non-conference games, but by the end of the season, I think it will be turned over to Kamario Davis.
And he's a good player.
And just kind of let that grow. So maybe they can pull off a win or two, and you can say, hey, look at these guys that we have at quarterback, this young core that we have developing. Come join us. Maybe that would help their recruiting as well. But yeah, I mean, I don't see them competing for a bowl game this year. It's just one of those things. Whenever you go to the air raid, God bless Michael Leach, RIP, the whole 9 yards. But whenever you come off of that, it takes about 3 years to get the roster turned over because that is a completely different type of player than regular football. And until you go through it, you don't know it.
Yeah, the pass protection, the practicing run blocking, the style of linemen you recruit, and then your defensive players are not used to going against those heavy hitters in the run game. Like that's why Bama and Georgia ran through those teams when they go, like not that they didn't run through most teams anyway, but like Mississippi State couldn't stop anybody. It's hard when you run that offense to be good on defense. So I agree. But they also changed coaches multiple times now. Like it's just been a sieve, really hard. And it's unfortunate. I don't care one way or the other about Mississippi State, but that's not good for the league to have a team like they were bad last season. So I'm curious to see some of the battles in state and recruiting this year between Mississippi State and Ole Miss. I mean, Ole Miss, I know this is going to probably tick Mississippi State fans off, but if they went for 8 kids, went 4 out of 8, it'd be a win for Ole Miss because they're so far ahead of them. Mississippi State needs to win like 6 out of 8. I just don't think that's realistic.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, that's probably pretty darn unrealistic. And I also think they've got to hit on some JUCO kids. The state of Mississippi's got great junior college talent. They have to tap into that. If you're not going to be as talented as some of the other teams, by golly, you certainly need to have more experience. At least those would be older players. If they went out and signed 5 JUCO kids, I think it would behoove Mississippi State and their coaching staff to do so. Kiffin might go get 1 or 2 of them as well. He's known to do that. But I think those are the tricks of the trade that they kind of have to do. But I'd say this year and probably next year as well, if Ole Miss doesn't win that game, and I know it's a rivalry, but if they don't win that game by double digits both years, I'd kind of be surprised. I think it'll be 27 before the rosters are even close to similar, and I don't think they're going to catch up with Ole Miss as long as Lane is there, because it's easier to recruit to Ole Miss than it is Mississippi State.
Yeah, and I think they're bad enough to where they need to go after, play the slot machine a little bit at the G5 level and the FCS level.
Yeah.
This person put up high numbers, give them a shot. If they don't work out, okay, they don't work out. It wouldn't be a situation where, like Ole Miss has won 10 games 3 out of the last 4 years. If a FCS defensive back doesn't work out, it may completely tank your season. That's not a situation that you're dealing with in Mississippi State right now.
Yeah, that's a whole different ballgame. Mississippi State probably, I don't know, Steven, 4.5. I think FanDuel's got it about right. If I had to guess, I'd probably go under, because they're like an injury or two away at certain spots where it can just go sideways. They don't have the depth. 1 year of getting your guys in is just not enough. It's nothing against that staff. I'm not trying to pick on them. It's just not enough.
The upset game that everybody needs to watch for, they have a shot against Tennessee. They have a real shot against Tennessee.
Why do you say the Vols?
That offense, they put up 20, 25 points last year in Neyland Stadium. This year is going to be in Starkville with better skill talent on the field. If it clicks, look out. That's the type of game that Tennessee could drop and that Mississippi State shows up for.
They're famous for those kinds of games too. That's the one thing about Mississippi State. They really are. Historically, they've had a lot of moments like that during their history, but that's also college football, and it's why I love it. It's why the greatest game on earth, in my opinion. Steven, tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
I am on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. You can get that on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Check that out. You can follow me on Twitter at the Steven Willis. It's a lot of fun. Thank you again, Brian, for holding the fort down while I was out. And now that it hopefully gets back and gets good, we can start back our weekly recruiting talks just like this. This is awesome.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. You can find the Portal Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon Music, just about anywhere that you get your pods. It's going to be there for you. So make sure you check us out, like it, subscribe, and leave us a review. Thank you very much. We will see you again soon. This has been the Portal Podcast and Locked On Ole Miss.